what seems to be happening to me is that the the new class of people that have kind of risen up in the world, the technological savvy, the technocrats, if you will, these people seem to be encouraging Marxism and all of its iterations to implement like kind of like a scorched earth policy to destroy economic systems, to destroy social systems for the purpose of perhaps at one point coming in and taking over the whole mess. And there's an article just this morning on Elon Musk. It was kind of interesting. It's called Musk the Dangerous. And some politicians now are getting really nervous about Elon Musk because, and you look at the guy, he's not a Marxist, he's not a communist at all. But you look at him and you say, well, how this guy is like rising up in influence and power. Now he's taken over Twitter, the largest social platform on the planet. And some politicians now are getting really nervous about where is he going with this? How influential is he going to be? And is he potentially going to knock us out of a job at some point? It's a very complex situation, but it seems to me that we've got two stratas of people working at the same time here, kind of towards the same goal.
And of course, you're the one that's shown that Elon Musk comes from a transhumanist background.
And technocracy as well. That's exactly right. So, there's two levels of operators here. There's the people at the very top, like the World Economic Forum types, who seem to be pretty much like the Elon Musk of the world. And then you have, all of the other nations, nation states, and so on, and they're all disintegrating. Basically, that's the whole point. The nation state is disintegrating right before our eyes. Now, we might exclude China from that because they seem to be really powerful in the world right now, but the South American countries, they're not getting stronger nationally, they're getting weaker. Same thing in Europe. Europe's already been neutered by the European Union, or the nations have. And we see this throughout South America, that nations are becoming weaker and weaker. So is Canada. It's beginning to splinter and fracture as well. Hats off to the new premier in Alberta, by the way, told the World Economic Forum to take a hike.
Yes.
Won't have anything to do with him anymore. That's great. More of us should do that. But we see this destruction of the nation state. This was planned. This was planned from going way back to the early 1970s. That's exactly what Zbigniew Brzezinski said, that the nation state is no longer going to be the element that controls the direction of the world.
And that's also what Strobe Talbot said in his famous 1990 editorial piece in Time magazine. We can't have nation states anymore. He was, of course, number 2, I think, at the State Department and a roommate of Clinton somewhere along the way when they were going to school together.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I think we see this playing out today. And, we would like to say, stop the parade. We don't want to lose our nation state. We want to keep America the way it is. And you've heard this statement, probably everybody has, borders, culture, and language. That's what makes a nation a nation. And, America is being degraded, even if we haven't had a total Marxist takeover here. It's being degraded like crazy as a nation state. We're losing our status on just about every side.
Well, in fact, over at technocracy.news, you have an article today. Bank for International Settlement test Enbridge. Bank for International Settlement tests Enbridge, successful pilot of cross-border central bank digital currency platform. 20 banks in Hong Kong, SAR, Thailand, mainland China, and United Arab Emirates used the Enbridge platform to conduct 164 payment and foreign exchange transactions totaling over 22 million. The pilot advances multi-central bank digital currency experimentation by settling real value directly on the platform. The Bank for International Settlements will present the Enbridge pilot at Hong Kong FinTech Week, along with updates on Project Arum. So there we go. We've been warning about the Bank for International Settlements for a long time here, and trying to explain it to people. And this is the central bank of central bankers. They, along with the World Bank and so many of these globalist organizations, they are leading the way on central bank dollars, which, again, what makes a nation is your borders, your history, your heritage, your culture, your language, your currency, your own laws. And what do we see? America's borders being erased, our history and heritage being torn down and destroyed, our history and heritage being called racist, not acceptable. We're losing our language. Press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish. We're losing our dollars, right? They're going to push us to a central bank digital currency. There's talk of merging America, Mexico, and Canada again with a North American Union. We're losing our religious heritage. I mean, everywhere you look, they're trying to erase America as we know it.
Yes, and this has been going on for a while, but it's really obvious now. On every count that you mentioned, we're getting slaughtered right now, and this was the plan for a long time. We've seen all the bricks being laid in the road to get to where we are today. The BIS, by the way, has a long history in well, skullduggery in the world.
Yes.
It was started back at a time when primarily to support the repayment programs that Germany was supposed to make after World War I. And the BIS has had a relationship with early on with Nazi Germany to, in some cases, proven by Anthony Sutton, by the way, to finance World War II and to move money around the world. And there was lots of dark things that happened within the BIS. They have never been associated or viewed as a communist organization, however. They primarily were on the fascist side of things, like i.e. in Nazi Germany and in Italy, Mussolini's Italy. So the BIS today is asserting itself again in the world. Okay, it's very powerful. They're the ones that are orchestrating all of the central banks to create central bank digital currencies. Now they have to have a way, of course, to interoperate. All those nations need to be able to interoperate because their various local implementations are a little bit different than it is in other countries. No problem. The BIS is going to be the revolving door that makes sure everything works in the world as one cohesive system. This is very dangerous because it's going to allow the collection of all financial data on everything that happens in the world. And, you know, people think, well, you mean I buy aspirin down at Walgreens? Yeah, well, that's recorded too. But how about all of the transactions on Wall Street, for instance, all the stocks that get traded, all the banking transactions otherwise that get all the money that gets moved around, everything gets bought. How about the property, the real estate transactions you have and stuff like that? All that stuff is going to be going back into a central location with these central banks, ultimately controlled by the Bank for International Settlements at the top. This is extremely dangerous for the world, and it's going to lead us straight into a scientific dictatorship.
Look at this headline. Saudi Arabia, U.S. on high alert after warning of imminent Iranian attack. U.S. prepared to respond. Well, again, like I said before the break, with all the oil shortages and fuel shortages that have been created, now just in time for Biden's buddies, that's who I was referring to when I said his friends, Biden's buddies in Iran to stir the pot even more and create a global crisis that can be exploited and push everybody to say, well, we better we're not relying on Saudi Arabia, not relying on fossil fuels. Let's get our energy from the sun and the wind, and then we won't have to worry about all this, you know, and we can take away the reason for wars. We won't be fighting over oil and such. We can just get it naturally. It doesn't work. That's the problem. Not in a way that's, enough to power everything we have. I mean, in California, they're telling you, don't plug in your cars, you'll crash the grid. So here we go, Patrick. Iran steps up to the game. You have to wonder if they've been given their billions and billions, but you're going to be the bad guy when we need you. When we need you, you become the bad guy. What say you?
Yes, you might remember how Iran got to be Iran in the first place.
Yes.
Going way back. It was Henry Kissinger who was the one who negotiated the exile of the Shah of Iran, brought him to the United States. He abdicated his rulership. The Ayatollahs came in and took over, and basically have been in control ever since. And it's been a dark place to live ever since, politically, economically. Although actually economically they're doing probably a little bit better, but they have become a powerhouse in the Mideast, and they're always the boogeyman. They are like the enemy. They have been the enemy ever since. And you see the warmongers now, and the neocon warmongers in our country especially have asserted themselves in the last, ever since Ukraine really got going and with Russia. You see them all over the place now, stimulating, poking, prodding, saying there's a danger, throwing out fear, the fear mongering, whatever. And it's like, you have to ask the question, are these people pushing for a world war? Is that really what they're trying to do now? Because we see them on multiple continents. We see them pushing and poking China. They're doing it now in Iran. They're doing it clearly with Russia. These are some of the main powers of the world. And, at some point, you just have to ask that question. I think, are they really pushing this time, not for a regional conflict, but for an all-out world war situation where missiles are just flying every which way?
I think they are. I absolutely think they are, because you wouldn't do the things they're doing if you weren't. Here's another article from the Jerusalem Post. Here's the interesting thing. You and I don't rehearse these shows. You don't even know what I'm going to bring up. I don't often know what you're going to say, but I have a collection of articles in my stack to pull from. So at any given moment, you say something, and I go, that'll fit and drop in this article right here, right now. So here is one. Ukraine is pushing the U.S. to pressure Israel into providing weapons to the country. Ukraine is pushing the U.S. That's what we're told. Is it really that? Or is the U.S. playing the narrative here and getting Ukraine to push, so-called push the U.S.? This is so orchestrated. But who is it they're trying to put in the middle for the squeeze? Israel. Trying to pressure Israel into providing weapons to the country. Oh, yeah. And that's, of course, going to go well for them with Russia, which Russia's already said if they do that, we're going to sever any ties we have. Well, again, it's almost like the Bible prophecy scenario is being set up where there's a complete cutoff between Moscow and Jerusalem and or Israel as a nation as a whole. And now we got the Gog-Magog scenario, a coalition of nations led by Gog and Magog, the leader of the coalition, and the coalition which comes out of Israel, that leader does, many believe. So, again, so many of these things seem to be setting the stage for future events to come to pass. And now we're going to put Israel right in the middle. I wonder what a bunch of Jew-hating, anti-Semite, demonically inspired people would do. Oh, that's right. Set up Israel, make sure they get in the middle, right?
That's exactly right. And we see, the wrong question asked at the right time can incriminate just about anybody, that you want to incriminate. And so Israel didn't ask for any of that, of course. They didn't ask for anybody to say, put pressure on them for anything. But now that they've been put on the spotlight, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. If they say, well, no, we don't want anything to do with Ukraine, forget it. They're going to get condemned for that. If they give anything to Ukraine, even just one little bullet, it's going to be there. Everybody's going to jump on them then too. So just by asking the question, they put them in a no-win situation. No matter what they say, they're going to get condemned.
I personally don't go around defending the government of Israel. I do when I agree, and I disagree when I disagree. But I defend the people, the Jewish people, because I understand what God says about the Jewish people. And he says, I'll bless those who bless you. I'll curse those who curse you. I have a plan for the Jewish people. I desire to gather them together as a mother hen gathers her chicks. He's put them under punishment, divine punishment, scattered them to the wind, spread them all over the world. Now he's gathered them back again to being a nation in 1948, May of 48. He has a plan for them. He wants them to come to repentance, to believe in Yeshua, Messiah. And so I understand that unsaved Jewish people, some of them do horrible things, just like unsaved Gentile people do horrible things. So we look at it through the lens of the Bible, and we're able not to fall into the trap of racism or anti-Semitism, but say, watch the glorious plan that God will work out to bring the Jewish people to him, to Yeshua Messiah, and then how that will benefit also others. In fact, the Bible says Israel would be a blessing to the world, and we've seen that in many regards with medicine and with medical advancements, and etc., technology. But most people don't understand this problem.
And anti-Semitism is like a disease of the mind. It's very what I say deceptive, because when people get infected with it, it's kind of like what they used to call in the gold rush days, gold fever. People would just get this passion that they had to do something, and it was focused on something. Back then, gold. Now it's beginning to focus on Jews. And there's no logic to it. There's no rhyme or reason to it whatsoever. But people just come up with this idea that they must hate somebody. Let's hate the Jew. Now we can say for sure that the devil has something to do with this.
Yes.
Satan, one who hates Israel, would like to wipe them all off the face of the map, every one of them, if that were possible. It's not, but we know that there's a spiritual issue in this whole thing as well. But as far as people on earth, like Kanye coming up and saying, well, it's Jews. How does he know that? How does he have any clue that he knows that? He has no historical basis, no research basis.
Now he's coming out.
Now
he's coming out today. I'm reading and saying that some kind of Jewish doctor wanted him dead.
Yes, I know. It's absolutely crazy. It's irrational. You can't justify it, and there's no research behind it whatsoever that would validate what they're saying.
Before we move on to another topic, Satan is clever in that he wants the Jews to be afraid of Christians, and the Jews have a reason to be afraid of a lot of Christians. And I put quotes around Christians, because it was the German Christians that threw in with Adolf Hitler, dissolved their denominations, united under the Reich bishop handpicked by Adolf Hitler. It was many of the, quote, Christian denominations in Germany that were carrying the swastika along with the cross on their flags, swearing their children into the service of the SS and their services, baptizing their children in front of the Nazi flag, taking out the Bible, putting in Mein Kampf, taking down the cross, putting in the swastika. It's all documented in Erwin Lutzer's excellent book, Hitler's Cross, as well as others. So when you say the word Christian, you have to explain to your Jewish friends, as I do often, let me explain to you what I mean by I'm a Christian. First of all, I'm a Christian Zionist. And I'm like, you know what a Zionist is? Well, I'm a Christian Zionist. I come at it not only from your historical right as a people to the land, but your biblical right to the land and what God's plan is for the Jewish people. And I start to put them at ease real fast. And one conversation recently, not too long ago, was with a conservative Jewish businessman who said, wow, you know more about the Jews and what's going on with Israel than I do. I'm ashamed of myself. I said, well, don't be. And he's like, we need to go to dinner. I mean, I just met the businessman, done a little business with him and his wife, and we just had a glorious conversation. But I immediately put them at rest when they found out I was a Christian. And what I explained about that, I said, here's why many Jews in America are nervous or around the world about the term Christian. And I explained what I just explained now. And he's like, wow, that's fascinating history. I should know this. So isn't it interesting, though, Patrick, that the liberal media wants to claim if we talk about globalism, we're the Jew haters, so that they can alienate Jews from Christians who have the message of Messiah or Yeshua. You see how, again, this works, this dialectic?
Yes.
Another article in the news today. This is from the Jerusalem Post. Israel must get rid of its nuclear weapons. This is coming from the United Nations. Subtitle, Israel never admitted to possess nuclear weapons, but nevertheless, the UN resolution was aimed at Israel, not Iran. So here we go again. What is made up of the UN so dominantly today? Islamist and Marxist. And the Islamist and the Marxist, the red-green axis, wants Israel to get rid of their nuclear weapons that they don't even know if Israel has nuclear weapons because they don't talk about it. We know Iran does, and the U.S. is giving Iran billions and billions and billions of dollars, but the UN, made up of its red-green axis, wants Israel to get rid of its so-called nuclear weapons that nobody knows if they actually have.
Yes. It's so pathetic. That we're in the situation today, exactly the situation that Francis Schaeffer predicted in the early 1970s. He said at the end of it, when the Christian consensus is lost, and it has been lost throughout the world, it's been lost here in America especially. He said when the Christian consensus is gone, the vacuum that is created by that, the moral restraint that's created that keeps society in line in a channel, something else will come in and fill that vacuum. You could bet on it. He said there will be an authoritarian technocratic elite, most likely, is going to fill that vacuum. Now, he said that in the 70s, and here we are, 2022, it's exactly what happened. There is no moral restraint. There is no ethical analysis of anything anymore. Deception is perfectly acceptable. Lying is perfectly acceptable. And so people all around the world are doing that. And truth, discerning truth from error, is almost an impossibility for a lot of people today. They just can't tell what's true. Even if it runs up and bites them, they can't tell.
Yep, and that's what Yuri Bezmenov also predicted. He said, you will not be able to convince someone of truth, even if you took them to the gulags and showed it. They still won't believe. It's almost, again, like something has happened at a spiritual level, and they cannot discern truth even if they wanted to. I guess that goes along with being given over per Romans 1 and having a debased, darkened-hearted mind and their conscience being seared or close to it. Here's an article from the Epoch Times today. Some mainstream media have reported the trend, meaning the idea of furries, kids dressing up like cats or dogs and growling and hissing and pawing at the air, that this was a myth created by conservatives falsely raising concerns about schools. However, teachers, school administrators, and parents around the country have told the Epoch Times that the furry movement indeed is a growing and disturbing trend. Ganal told 710 KNUS radio host Jimmy Singenberger that, quote, not many people know that we have furries in Colorado schools, kids identifying as cats. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's happening all over Colorado, and schools are tolerating it. It's insane, end quote. We're getting more and more reports from parents around the country. Their kids are going to school with kids that dress up like cats or dogs. We even have in the Mid-South reports from kids who come to us and tell us that some fellow students lead each other around with dog chains in the schools, and this is allowed.
Yes, that's crazy. The the young generation especially is unhinged at this point. This is so sad, but it's going to give us a generation when they're up and out in the world and starting to control things. You can just see how mad, how crazy it's going to become. But the young mind and this whole generation, across the generation, this whole mind in this particular generation has been unhinged from reality. And now it's like anything that comes in, any idea that's planted in their mind takes root and grows, and all of a sudden that's where it is. Believing that you're a cat instead of, or a dog instead of a human being is so unimaginable to most people, at least maybe over 50. It's completely unimaginable. How could somebody come to that conclusion? Or you think, well, they're just play acting, right? Oh, they're just kids, they're just play acting. No, they're not. Psychologically, mentally, and emotionally, they have become the animal that they represent. That's what they want to do. They want to be identified that way as a cat or a dog or some other animal. It's insane. And this the whole generation now is kind of buying into this mentality. You say, what else will they be capable of when they become teenagers and in the young 20s and the 30s, whatever? I can't imagine.
Well, you know that some of these kids that are doing this are in high school. So you could expect a 4, 5, 6-year-old pretending he's a cat or a dog, right? And generally they do this for just a little bit, then they realize walking around on all fours on the carpet and the floor is not real comfortable. So they maybe do this for a day or so. It's they're a kid, 4, 5, 6 years old. We're talking high school students. What is, as you said, what is going on mentally with these kids that they would even want to do that?